Well, India and the European Union have finally sealed a long-awaited free trade agreement. It's been called historic, even the mother of all deals. Big words, big promises. But what does it actually mean for you? Why does this trade deal matter and how will it touch your daily lives? We'll break down all of that over the next few minutes. This historic trade covers nearly 97% of goods traded between India and Europe. It gives Indian businesses access to all 27 EU nations as one market. For India, this means deeper integration with one of its largest trading partners, stronger supply chains, and a potential boost to exports and investment. But what does that translate to for the Indian consumers? Under the deal, tariffs on European wines, spirits, beer will fall sharply. Duties that once went as high as 150% are now set to come down to much lower levels. We'll talk about what levels exactly in just a bit. That could mean imported liquor will become more affordable over time. Another big winner is Indian manufacturing. Textiles, apparel, leather, footwear will now enter the European Union with no import duty. This makes Indian products more competitive in Europe. The ripple effect could mean more orders and more jobs in India's manufacturing hubs. Sectors like pharmaceuticals, electronics, gems and jewelry, chemicals, processed food are also expected to benefit from lower duties and easier access. And numbers don't lie. Here's how these tariff cuts are playing out in numbers. Wine duties will fall up to 150%, from 150% to 20% for premium and 30% for medium segments. So we'll just pull out those numbers on what the before and after will look like. We'll start with wine, 150% to 20% for premium, 30% for medium segments. Spirit duties to drop to about 40%. We'll just try and pull out those numbers to give you an exact picture. Beer duties again will fall from 110% to 250%. You see there the wine figures, 150 to 20% premium, 30% medium. And then we of course are going to talk about spirit duties, how they drop from 40%. Beer duties as well will fall from 110% to 50%. Cars will see a phased cut. That's the big gain here, from 110% to as low as 10%. Now this of course comes with a but. This is only for a limited number of premium imports. Apparel and textiles to move from 12% to zero. Leather and footwear from 17% to zero. Electronics from 14% to zero. Chemicals from nearly 13% to zero. Plastics, pharmaceuticals, olive oil, processed foods all move to zero duty. So when you look at these numbers together, it is very clear that this deal is far bigger than just a few products, isn't it? India-EU trade already stands at over $135 billion, covering nearly 2 billion consumers and thousands of European companies operating in India, which brings us to the bigger conversation. How does this deal reshape India's place in a changing global economy? Who gains the most from this deal? Is it you, the consumers? Is it the exporters or global brands? Let's quickly go across to our guest this morning who will be decoding this and much more with us. We're being joined by Linscott, Senior Advisor at US-India Strategic Partnership Forum and former Assistant US Trade Representative, along with Anant Ladha, founder of an investment firm, Invest Aaj For Kal. He's a big face on social media. Is known for giving his tips every now and then. Good morning, Anand. Good morning, Mark. Thank you for joining us on the Breakfast Club. Let's take this conversation forward. The last few hours have been all about what this means for India, but we really want to understand, Mark. This FTA covers almost all traded goods, 99% of Indian exports, 97% of EU exports by value. Would you today say, or would it be fair to call this the biggest trade deal India has ever signed?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. India certainly has had some significant accomplishments on trade in the last couple of years, and most recently the UK. We had EFTA, Oman. I mean, the list goes on. We've been anticipating this one forever. I mean, this is a negotiation that's been going on for nearly 2 decades. A couple of long pauses during the course of negotiations. So I think it's impressive that the two sides have finally seen the negotiation through to the end, and we actually have a result.
Okay, lovely. Anand, let's really talk about everyone who's watching this, possibly having their breakfast as we speak. And I'll ask Mark what this means for our breakfast every day. But for all the olive oils, for the wines, all of that, the price going down on our shelves, how soon do you think that dip will be felt and that impact will be felt by the Indian consumer?
Hi, firstly, a very good morning to you and all our viewers. I think it's a good news for all of us. It has been in talks from last 17 years. Talks started in 2007, and finally we are seeing it crystallizing, which is a big positive. It is actually impacting 2 billion plus people, 25% of the global GDP, and 30% of the global trade. That's a big number. And we can't expect such a big number to be impacted overnight. I believe it will take some time to get approvals.
Legal scrubbing, all of that will take time.
8 to 9 months. As fast as maybe 8 to 9 months, but minimum of 8 months is what I am expecting.
Okay, Mark, are things getting better for those eating breakfast, watching our show right now? What's your assessment there?
Well, it depends on what's on the menu. What's being served up on that plate, and there are some exclusions. Ursula von der Leyen, the EU president, made it clear some weeks ago that, for the most part, agriculture was not going to be part of this deal. I was a little skeptical of that. And in fact, we've seen from the summaries on both sides that there are some agriculture products that are in the deal, but they are the non-sensitive items. For example, I saw that the EU highlighted pears and kiwis. On the Indian side, table grapes will have better access. So that is a big general exclusion, that the agriculture sector writ large is not included. More generally though, obviously a free trade agreement of this sort should contribute to the economies of both countries. There will be impacts. They could take some time to play out. Frankly, I think over time, or certainly immediately, the impacts are going to be a bit modest in terms of actual growth in exports between the two countries, increases in gross domestic product. I think it will be slow to emerge, that we will see changes like that. But generally, this is a good story for both sides.
Yeah, and let's just start humble, right? So let's just keep our expectations at the lowest, because that's when we'll possibly feel the impact the most. Anand, now tell us, for you, what's been the key takeaway? Has the big story really been the access we will have now to European products going forward, because it's obviously going to be at a cheaper rate? Is that the bigger takeaway, or the fact that this is going to lead to so much job creation? It's going to also lead to greater access to EU market, right? So our products are going to be out there and they're going to be purchased, and we'll talk about whether or not that will have any production cost. Will that lead to any fall in production cost here? But what's been the big story for you?
See, for me, the biggest story is that they have been prioritizing the labor-intensive sector, which almost is worth around $33 billion, and it will be impacted on a preferential basis, on immediate basis. It includes textile, leather, marine product, and even jewelry. So this is one important point that they are focusing on.
I can't hear what he says.
Mr. Cherian, we'll try and fix that for you. Mr. Dilip Cherian is with us. He's through this morning. Thank you for joining us, sir. We'll just come to you in a bit. Yes, go ahead.
I'll just complete my pointer. For me, the biggest game changer is the aircraft and the aerospace, because India is importing right now almost all the civil aircrafts, and now we'll have almost equal to zero tariffs over there, which is a big positive. For common man, buying a luxury car, which was earlier dream, might become a reality because the duties might slash. And finally, the labor-intensive sector, which is $33 billion, is being positively impacted, and we'll see free trade over there, which will impact all of us directly and immediately.
Okay, lovely. Good morning, Mr. Cherian. It took a while to get you on board, but you're here.
Thank you.
Hopefully, you've had your breakfast already. I want to understand from you, I just was discussing with Anant about what this means for the Indian consumer. It also means greater access to European luxury brands, FMCG products. Now, how do you see that playing out on brand dynamics in India going forward?
Well, to start with, let's look at brand India. I think for brand India, this has been a big deal because the world was waiting for these markets the European and the Indian markets to have some kind of alignment. And I think it means a lot for brand India. Now, as far as the high-end European brands are concerned, their easier access into India will mean actually two things. One is a change in prices, but two, a lot of brands who are sitting at the edge of the pool and not wanting to enter a market like India will now take the plunge. This is going to make a whole bunch of brands available to India locally. So Indians will no longer have to travel to Munich or to Madrid to access some of these European brands. You will see them finding space in the Indian marketplace. And don't forget that India's got a population which at the top end can afford these top end products from Europe. So easier market access, more brands.
And what does it mean for their wallet, Mr. Cherian? Even though they're willing to pay, if you were to just give us an estimated number, so it's relatable for everyone who's watching this broadcast, what would
the initial estimates that are available, and I've spoken only to a few industry associations, most of them expect in the first 5 years an increase of 15 to 20% in their accessing the market. So this means that actually that India's elite markets will have an impact in terms of more product availability, and I think it goes well beyond olive oil and luxury cars.
Okay, speaking of luxury cars, Mark, car tariffs will phase down from 110% to about 10%, as low as 10%. That's a big story there, but this is limited on quota vehicles, only a few luxury vehicles. Should the middle class Indian consumer get excited about more European cars here? What's your thought there?
Yeah, I think, in fact, I expect that the Europeans and the Europeans who generally produce smaller cars that might be more sellable in the Indian market will benefit more than, for example, U.S. car manufacturers generally with big platforms in terms of the models that are exported. So I think that there could be a much broader variety of consumer options in the automobile sector with a tariff rate that is coming down substantially. It is what we call a tariff rate quota, as I recall. It is a limited number of automobiles that will be able to come in at the lower tariff, but it should see some real benefits. We may see more European cars on the Indian highways in the near future.
Okay, Mr. Cherian, it means more Audis, BMWs, Mercedes-Benz, Volkswagen on the Indian roads. But do you think the Indian manufacturers have something to fear here? We're just looking at the luxury segment, European cars. But that said, anytime there is a big inflow of cars from any other nation, there's a little bit of competitiveness, a little bit of fear that obviously props up.
Point, and I think that there's more than fear. At the moment, the Indian roads, if you look at the brands, while the European brands are there, we have the Korean brands and the Japanese brands, and they are working out all kinds of tariff regulation changes and their impact at the moment. But I feel that because the numbers are restricted and the Indian market has seen growth as far as the top end luxury brands are concerned, that is where the Europeans have always had a larger share. So there's no getting away from the fact that though the numbers may be small, the fact that the top end of those cars will find much easier access and presence on the Indian roads will change things for a lot of buyers who are not willing to spend the kind of duties that were involved. Does it mean that there will be a deceleration in the efforts to make many of these cars more and more in India? I'm afraid there will be. And we need to recognize that a lot of the top-end models will now be just fully imported.
Yeah, 100%. Anant, let's talk about the Indian manufacturers. And I'm going to push you a little out of your comfort zone, not just talk money and ask for how consumers can spend going forward, but also want to understand from you, for all of these manufacturers, let's say in jewels, gems and jewelry, footwear, apparel, all of them are going to have easy access to EU markets. So it's going to be a big story going forward for Indian manufacturers. A lot of them, though, also purchase machinery, raw products from Europe. Do you think production costs could fall here then? Because that's going to impact you and I, all of our pockets.
See, obviously it will fall for the exporters. But supposedly there is a company which is mainly selling their product in India. Competition will rise at the same time. Yesterday we saw in stock market. I know you are trying to get me away from the stock market, but if I try directly link it with the stock markets, yesterday we saw fall in automobile segment specifically because there is expectations that they'll face the heat of this deal. Probably right now, luxury cars
and I think the sound of it, even before something gets implemented, the sound of it triggers that first wave of fear. And that's exactly what happened.
Absolutely yes, absolutely yes. Right now, only 4% of the market share is dominated by the luxury European cars. But eventually, if it will get cheaper, expectations is, just to give an example and quantify it, BMW 3 Series right now is costing around 70 to 73 lakhs. It is expected that eventually it might go below 50 lakhs if the duties are properly implemented and actual benefit is being passed on. So that's a big number. If this much amount of relaxation is given to the customer, probably a lot of customers might move towards luxury segment and it might become accessible with easy finances which is available, due to which Indian cars and Indian manufacturers might face some heat. So right now, reaction is mixed. We will have to give it some time because actual implementation will take a few quarters, probably even more because approvals are still pending. But yes, I feel eventually in the long run, competition is better for consumer. Consumer is the biggest beneficiary whenever we have competition around. So yes, it is a big win for the consumer. And for manufacturers who are ready to expand and explore international markets, obviously they'll have a big plus.
More competition means more choices. So it's a win-win for the Indian consumer for sure. Anand, but you know, the one thing which everyone was looking at is whether there'll be a big breakthrough in agricultural products, because that's a sensitive area. And that, remember, the two sides have dealt with great caution. So there's been a big relief, at least when it comes to those sensitivities. Mark, but every trade deal has winners and losers. Which sectors in India might feel pressure from this agreement, you think?
Oh, well, I mean, the sector that probably is going to feel the most pressure has been largely excluded, and that's agriculture. We've already touched on a couple of sectors, like automobiles, where there's going to be increased pressure. The alcoholic beverage industry may feel a bit more pressure, and that's a sector that the Indian government has cultivated, and there's been some real successes in that sector. I mean, perhaps there's been a calculation that several of these industries are strong enough to be able to withstand the pressure of imports, and perhaps it's even advantageous for them to face some competition and be able to, to respond to that kind of pressure. And it could even help export interests in other markets. So sure, there are winners and losers. I calculate that there are likely to be more winners on both sides through this deal than losers.
Correct. Speaking of which, Mr. Cherian, another important story is how do we ensure that, yes, we're enjoying the choices that we will have going forward, more European products that we'll have easy access to, but also not to undermine the India story and our local products. How do you think we can strike that balance? As a consumer, but also as manufacturers and somebody who's looking at a big vision for the country.
the big story for Indian brands is going to be their ability to ramp up their scale and look at European markets, which, by the way, are going through a phase where they want to look at new products because many of those products are not affordable to Europeans locally. So what is going to happen is that Indian players are going to have to find those niches where they can actually enhance, increase, and access markets that they haven't had access to before. There is a very big market there, and the European market has been rather fallow as far as Indian exports are concerned.
Yeah.
And you will see that they will find, and this increase in scale and sale will mean benefits in India, because as they ramp up production, you're going to find that they will be able to expand their footprints in India, which already exist but are all small. So the artisans, the crafts, the local products which have the quality to find acceptability in Europe will go up. But I think even while we talk about this gigantic FTA, we need to understand that at some stage, in some form or the other, all of us are forgetting that the elephant in the room is the incomplete and seemingly fraught US trade deal. So, while we are talking about this deal, we need to understand what if. The what if question also needs to be kept in our minds as we see how Indian companies cope with this current opportunity as well as the current pressure on some sectors.
Okay, so let's address the elephant in the room. And I was actually deliberately saving the best for the last. Mark, tell us, from your perspective in Washington, how does this shift India's trade posture relative to the US and China to an extent? Let's hear it, because we've seen a lot of people panic over what's happened in India the last few hours.
Yeah, that seems to be the big question. I think a lot of speculation that somehow this deal came together because of how the Trump administration has deployed its trade policy and tariff negotiations. I definitely do not see cause and effect here. I don't think some of the chaos associated with tariffs led the two trading partners, the EU and India, to strike this deal. They've been at it for a long time, and they accelerated their efforts during the Biden administration before we had Trump 2.0. In terms of US-India, I mean, that's what I focus on so much. I remain very hopeful that there will be a deal soon. I think the two sides are very close. I think both sides are motivated. Perhaps a FTA with the EU ramps up that motivation a bit more, perhaps puts a bit more fire under the negotiation. But I think both sides want it, and I don't see the EU FTA as being a material factor in their efforts to get this done.
Yeah, surely both sides wanted, whether or not these are positive signs. We're in India at least walking ahead with our fingers crossed, but let's see how that plays out and whether or not this is going to be the panic button that really was needed to sort of set things in the right motion. Thank you so much, gentlemen. That's all the time we have. Thank you for joining us, decoding that all-important story, telling our viewers how they can spend better, what best they can make of the EU-India deal. The mother of all deals coming.